It's like archaeology woke up recently and decided to spice up the news with its history-changing discoveries. From unearthing dinosaur fossils in peaceful Iowa to translating bad news from ancient Babylonian texts, history is revealing its secrets like never before. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, it froze the town in time. Some of the most famous discoveries were heartbreaking, like a mother wearing a golden bracelet, holding her child, or two sisters hugging in fear. At least that's what scientists thought. In 2024, advanced DNA tests shattered these long-held beliefs. The mother from the House of the Golden Bracelet was actually a man wearing a fancy 30-carat bracelet, and the child wasn't even related to him. As for the two sisters, DNA revealed one was actually a man, while the other remains a mystery. Some speculate they were lovers, but the truth is still buried in time. Speaking of rewriting history, another shocking revelation comes from ancient Babylon. Recently, archaeologists translated 4,000-year-old texts that turned out to be heralds of terrible news. These specific texts that were translated are believed to be from Sippar, a city near the Euphrates River in modern Iraq. They talked about lunar eclipses, which is when the Earth's shadow blocks the moon, and for ancient Babylonians, these were warnings. Eclipses could mean everything from floods and famines to chaos in the kingdom. But here's the interesting twist. Babylonians also came up with clever ways to cancel these bad omens, like calling in priests to perform rituals, or consulting oracles for advice. These ancient astrologers took their job seriously, since it wasn't just about stargazing. It was about keeping the kingdom safe. Augustus was the first Roman emperor, so we can say he was a big deal. Archaeologists have already found ruins of the villas where he partied, but now they think they've found his final resting place. In a place near Naples, they've found an old structure buried under a villa. They found the equivalent of a modern heating system, something that was probably used to draw warm baths. They also found shelves filled with ancient jars, suggesting the site later became a temple. They're still not sure this was Augustus's last home, but if confirmed, this would be a big deal for world history. While ancient Rome is surprising us, the famous Nazca lines in Peru are also revealing hidden details. These massive geoglyphs, created thousands of years ago, have only been partially studied until now. Scientists trained artificial intelligence to help them scan 243 miles of terrain. With AI's help, they identified over 300 new motifs, including llamas, stick figure people, and strange heads. The algorithm, originally developed to decode charred scrolls from Mount Vesuvius, has doubled the number of known glyphs. The past is getting a serious digital upgrade. Meanwhile, in Bulgaria, archaeologists made a surprising discovery in a place few would expect: a sewer. In 2024, researchers unearthed a nearly intact 6.8-foot-tall marble statue of Hermes, the Greek god of travelers and trade, hidden beneath layers of soil. Experts believe it was placed there for safekeeping after an earthquake in 383 CE damaged the city's infrastructure. At that time, paganism was declining and Christianity was rising as the Roman Empire's official religion. Many pagan idols were being destroyed, but it seems some locals secretly preserved their deities by hiding them underground. Searching the bottom of the River Thames is probably worse than looking under your bed. The riverbed collects all kinds of discarded treasures, including a legendary typeface. In the early 1900s, two men created the Dove's typeface for printing books, but after a bitter falling out, one of them threw every single metal letter into the river. A century later, in 2014, a designer trying to revive the typeface began searching for the lost letters. In just 20 minutes, he started finding them. With the help of divers, more were uncovered, and today, some of the lost letters are on display in a museum. Not much goes on in Iowa, which is why finding a huge 13,000-year-old mastodon skeleton made headlines. In 2022, a researcher received a photo of a massive femur believed to belong to a prehistoric animal. It took 2 years to secure funding for excavation, but in 2024, archaeologists finally dug in. After 12 days of work, they uncovered a well-preserved mastodon skull, the first ever found in a Midwestern state. This discovery would make Indiana Jones jealous, especially since it happened in Petra, the ancient Jordanian city featured in one of the movies. Archaeologists uncovered a 2,000-year-old chamber beneath Petra's treasury, containing at least 12 skeletons along with iron and bronze artifacts. The chamber, built by the Nabateans, sheds new light on their afterlife practices, which remain largely mysterious. One of the most intriguing finds was a ceramic chalice clutched by one of the skeletons. Back in Peru, archaeologists made a groundbreaking discovery that turned Peruvian history upside down: a female ruler. At the 1,600-year-old site of Pachacamac, scientists uncovered a throne room decorated with colorful murals. These murals depict women spinning and weaving, men carrying a crown, and even a crowned woman speaking to a birdman. The discovery suggests that Moche women weren't just spiritual leaders, but rather had real political power too. Tiny houses are mainly a modern thing, but archaeologists think they found one in ancient Pompeii. Unlike traditional Roman homes, which had grand atriums for entertaining guests, this house had none. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in artistry. Inside, scientists found a painted altar decorated with birds of prey, sparrows, snakes, and plants. The altar held ceremonial items like a lamp and an incense burner, still holding traces of fragrant herbs. In 2021, researchers scanning the Baltic Sea found a massive stone wall hidden beneath the waves. The Blinker Wall, stretching over 1.5 miles, could be Europe's oldest man-made structure. Sitting 68 feet below the surface, it's built from around 1,400 small stones placed between 300 giant boulders, some weighing up to 142 tons. Dating back over 10,000 years, the Blinker Wall predates Stonehenge and France's Karnak stones, meaning it was likely built when the area was dry land. Scientists believe it may have been a reindeer hunting tool, guiding animals into a lake where hunters could strike. Oh, and then there's the granite slab that was found in Egypt's Abydos area. At first, it was thought to belong to 2 important people from ancient Egypt, but a recent discovery showed it was actually part of the sarcophagus of Pharaoh Ramses II, one of the most famous Egyptian rulers. A researcher found a special engraving on the slab that had Ramses II's name on it. Ramses ruled Egypt a long time ago, and after he died, his tomb was looted, so his body and belongings were moved around a few times. This new discovery shows that after Ramses' tomb was robbed, some of his things were used again. The finding also teaches us that ancient Egyptian tombs were often looted, and the things in them were reused. Recently, something unexpected happened during a dig in Norton Disney, back in England. While searching for ancient coins and brooches, a volunteer from the Norton Disney History and Archaeology Group stumbled upon a mysterious Roman dodecahedron. This small hollow object, made of copper alloy with 12 pentagonal sides, was buried for 1,700 years, but was surprisingly well preserved. Though over 30 of these strange objects have been found in the UK, no one knows for sure what they were used for. Some think they might have been measuring tools or calendars, while others believe they were used for rituals. The Norton Disney Group thinks these dodecahedra were likely symbols for religious ceremonies, as many show no signs of wear from daily use. Ever since Plato wrote about the allegory of Atlantis, humanity has been fascinated with the possibility of the discovery of a thriving underwater civilization. Fancy joining me on a trip to a few historic underwater sites? Let's see what we can find out about ancient civilizations. The first one on our list is what is being called the underwater Stonehenge. Scientists have recently discovered a mysterious pile of cairns that stretch for miles under the shimmering waters of Lake Constance at the borders of Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. Archaeologists began to explore the site back in 2015, and they haven't been able to understand yet what it was actually used for. What they do know is that there is a 12-mile line of 170 human-made stone cairns under Lake Constance. Scientists say this was most likely the result of a combined work of several villages. The cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose. The formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. Now, what were we humans doing back then? We were living in the prime years of the so-called Stone Age. We were beginning to make artifacts from stone and use them to hunt and eat. Can you imagine what a knife and fork might have looked like back in those days? It's no coincidence that scientists call this site the underwater Stonehenge, though. Both sites are believed to have been built around the same period of time. You see, Stonehenge dates back to around 3100 BCE. Both sites carry the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circle. Not to mention the fact that scientists also haven't figured out why on earth our early ancestors would feel the need to build a monument such as Stonehenge. Well, the mystery of Lake Constance hasn't been solved yet. Who were the Neolithic people from this area? And for what purpose did they go through such an amount of work and effort to build this huge stone site? Next, we're taking you on a tour of the Ryukyu Islands just off the coast of Japan. You're diving deep down to an archaeological site. But I should warn you, the waters of the Pacific Ocean are far from smooth. It doesn't take long before you see a huge structure, thanks to the sunlight shining down on the seabed. At first, it looks like Machu Picchu's ruins located across the globe in Peru. As you approach the site, you slowly figure out its forms. A pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or a castle. Could this be a sign of human activity? What you've just seen is known today as the Yonaguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 soccer fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising feature is its expanse of terraces. Explorers and scientists believe that Yonaguni might be 10,000 years old. But whether it's a human-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yonaguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived to the bottom of the ocean to explore the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. On the monument's surface, there is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There's also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure. And, according to Kimura, turtles have an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age is around 10,000 years. However, not all scientists support this theory. For many, Yonaguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it's not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation in Northern Ireland, known as the Giant's Causeway. The basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they're actually the result of volcanic activity in the region. Now, you're flying to the coast of Greece, 4 hours away from Athens. More specifically, You're in the Peloponnese Peninsula. You dust off an old snorkel and head for a free dive on a bright sunny day. Sometime into the dive, you start noticing patterns on a seabed. 13 feet below the surface, outlines of familiar objects start to appear, one by one. As you continue swimming, what looks like the outline of an entire city emerges in front of your eyes. Are you wondering how water could have taken the whole city? Rocks are perfectly aligned into what appears to be the foundation of a building. This is Petri, an ancient city you've probably heard about for the first time. It was discovered by Nicholas Fleming, a British oceanographer, when he was on vacation in Greece. He had heard rumors about Petri's existence and indeed found several artifacts on the seafloor. He went back to the area a year later with the team. They found a site filled with pots, storage vessels, and tools. A kernstone, for instance, is a tool used for grinding grains and turning them into flour. Multiple amphoras indicate that this settlement dates back to the Bronze Age, 5,500 years ago, when people started living in towns. The settlement is believed to have existed for over 2,400 years. Today, Petri is considered the oldest submerged town ever discovered, and what's impressive is that it wasn't a simple village. It was a vibrant port city with stone buildings, a marketplace, streets, and even squares. The next stop on our voyage is one of today's most famous underwater cities that has been turned into an archaeological park. The city of Port Royal in Jamaica exists only below the surface, but in 1692 it was one of the wealthiest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Port Royal was the center of the British Empire at the time and an important trade city that attracted people from all over the region. It was also home to real-life pirates of the Caribbean. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the people of Port Royal met a different fate than they had probably expected. The city woke up shaking. People were thrown out of their beds by the power of a massive earthquake, ranking 7.5 on a Richter scale. One survivor said he had seen Earth opening up and swallowing the whole town. What he said could be true, as the city was mainly built on sand. The ground swallowed buildings, roads, you name it. Geysers erupted, and finally, waves as big as 10-story buildings hit the city. About 33 acres of the city disappeared under the water. Amazingly, most of its 17th century remains are still in good condition under 40 feet of water. Archaeologists have found taverns, storage rooms, kitchens, and recreational buildings used for diverse purposes. You can also see a grand lion statue, a submerged bridge, and many picturesque arches. Of course, I saved the best for last: India. Just off its coast lies another sunken marvel. A site known as the Lost City of Cambay is located in the Gulf with a similar name. It remained undiscovered until 2001, when the National Institute of Ocean Technology made a routine water assessment. With the help of sonar technology, which sends a wave sound to the bottom of the sea, they found something far beneath the surface. Images showed well-defined geometric shapes spread along a 5-mile stretch. The remains date to more than 9,500 years ago, meaning this civilization was lost at around the end of the Ice Age. Debris recovered from the site included construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even bones. Scientists argue whether these artifacts are indeed from the site, but if they truly are, then the lost city of Cambay might be the oldest civilization in the world. Scientists discovered something Atlantis-like near Australia. There used to be an entire continent that's now underwater. Here's what happened to it. Around 70,000 years ago, during the last ice age, there was a huge landmass called Sahul. It was located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean. This ancient supercontinent connected what we now know as Australia, New Guinea, Tasmania, and the Aru Islands into one giant piece of land. Imagine lush tropical rainforests surrounded by beautiful mountains. Sahul's tallest mountains were in the New Guinea highlands, with peaks reaching over 13,000 feet. This beautiful place was home to a variety of unique animals, most of which were pouched creatures. But back then, they weren't just koalas and kangaroos. Sahul was filled with different types of grazers, burrowers, scavengers, and predators. It was home to a huge diprotodon, a powerful hunter Thiosolio, and a horrifying Megalania, a creature that's much larger than any living lizard today. It was a unique place because the rest of the world was filled with placental animals at the time, like wolves, elephants, and humans. In Sahul, the only normal mammals were bats and rodents. But not all its parts were the same. The Timor, Arafura, and Carpentaria regions were covered by hot savanna and dry forests. It looked kinda like modern Australia, hot air deserts with scrubland, steppe, and temperate forests along the eastern coast. Back then, people were migrating all across the world. They made an incredible journey from Southeast Asia to Sahul and first arrived here from 60 to 45,000 years ago. They mostly traveled by foot and crossed the sea using bamboo rafts and simple boats. They came there from an ancient landmass called Sunda, which includes parts of Southeast Asia. They traveled across a series of islands known as Wallachia and eventually spread across Sahul. And it wasn't a small journey. Sahul was huge, around 4.1 million square miles. That's bigger than the USA or Canada. It stretched from the equator to around the southern part of New Zealand. So they arrived in what is now Australia and became Australia's first people. Scientists think that Sahul had a population of 500,000. We've discovered cave paintings that date back around 40,000 years. It's a hunting scene depicting an anoa, or miniature buffalo, facing figures of humans and animals. Researchers are trying to figure out how these early settlers moved across Sahul and where we might find archaeological evidence of their journey. To do this, they created a landscape evolution model. The simulation showed how Sahul changed between 75,000 and 35,000 years ago. It showed potential migration routes and archaeological sites. Humans likely traveled along coastlines and rivers. But how did Sahul get submerged off the coast of Australia, similar to the mythical Atlantis? During the last ice age, much of the Earth's water was locked up in large ice sheets and glaciers. The sea levels were much lower than they are today. After that, the global temperatures increased. The ice sheets melted and the sea levels rose, flooding the land bridges that once connected different parts of Sahul together. About 8,000 years ago, New Guinea separated from mainland Australia, and then, about 6,000 years ago, Tasmania did the same. We still can explore the underwater parts of Sahul thanks to new technology. Divers explore and collect samples directly from the ocean floor. Underwater drones can go to places that are too deep or dangerous for humans to explore. And with sonar mapping, scientists use sound waves to create maps of the ocean floor. It's like using an echo to see what's underwater. The sound waves bounce off the seabed and come back, helping us create a picture of what it looks like. Deep underwater, archaeologists have found stone tools and other artifacts. They also discovered fossils of animals like Diprotodon and Thylasolio. By studying the underwater terrain of Sahul, they learned about the ancient rivers, lakes, and coastlines that existed during the Ice Age. But Sahul isn't the only underwater continent. Sahul isn't the only hidden gem of Southeast Asia. Take Sundaland, a place made up of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and some other islands. This place was crazy huge during the Ice Age, but now almost fully underwater. Almost, but not entirely. The parts above the ocean are teeming with life. If you like birds, check this place out. It has almost a fifth of the world's bird species. You can spot colorful birds like the Java hawk eagle and the Bali starling among the lush forests. It's also a home to a fourth of Earth's fish species. Sundaland's waters are a haven for marine life, even the most exotic animals like the Asian arowanas. It's also a treasure trove of flowers. That's where you can find Rafflesia and Titan arum, the world's largest flowers. This makes it very similar to Zealandia. Zealandia is a long, narrow piece of land about half the size of Australia. It broke from Antarctica about 100 million years ago. Just like Sundaland, it isn't fully underwater. 7% of it stayed above sea level. This sticking out little piece is what we now call New Zealand, along with Stewart Island and some smaller islands. These pieces of Zealandia are lush and warm. They're packed with volcanoes, mountain ranges, beautiful natural geysers, and hot springs. Local people, Maori, use these hot springs for cooking. People place corn, eggs, and vegetables in baskets and lower them directly in the hot springs. Sometimes they cook food in a pit oven using heated rocks. Another hidden world is known as Argoland. This mysterious landmass was once part of Australia, back when dinosaurs chilled around. It drove scientists crazy for decades. They knew it existed because it left a huge stretch on the ancient seafloor, the Argo-Abyssal Plain. About 155 million years ago, it broke off from Australia, saying bye-bye. The continent drifted somewhere north, and when it reached Southeast Asia, it just vanished. Scientists had no idea where it went, but recently they finally found its remains. Turns out, poor Argoland's lower parts started drowning into the Sunda Trench, a horrifyingly deep oceanic pit. The Earth's crust sunk into the mantle. Meanwhile, the upper parts of Argoland were pushed upward, grabbing the younger rocks on land. Because of this, Argoland broke apart into a bunch of smaller pieces. These pieces formed parts of Borneo, Java, Sulawesi, and other regions. The remains are buried under Indonesia and Myanmar. Imagine a colossal landmass the size of Greenland, Greater Adria. Its journey began about 240 million years ago when it broke away from the supercontinent Gondwana. It started moving north, and after 100 million years of enjoying the warm seas, it suddenly crashed into Europe and shattered into pieces. Most of these pieces went deep into the Earth's mantle, but some were scraped off and became part of mountain ranges like the Alps. Today, the remnants of Greater Adria are scattered across more than 30 countries, from Spain to Iran. That's why they're hard to look for. Seychelles was also once part of Gondwana. Yep, these idyllic islands are sitting atop of the ancient continent. We know a lot about it because of its fascinating granite outcrops. 100 years ago, Alfred Wegener discovered continental drift, but no one believed him. These granite outcrops helped him prove that he's not crazy and that tectonic plates really are moving. The Seychelles broke off from India and Madagascar and eventually became a sad loner in the Indian Ocean. This probably happened because of some insanely active volcanoes in the Deccan Traps. But now, the islands are home to unique species both on land and in the coral reefs nearby. Mauritius broke off from India after the dinosaur wiping. Along its journey, it stretched into a long ribbon-like shape and also broke into pieces. Now it's all scattered beneath the Indian Ocean. Scientists stumbled upon this lost land by studying tiny ancient crystals called zircons. These zircons are like time capsules. They date back an astonishing 660 million to 2 billion years. That's even older than Mauritius itself. These ancient crystals hinted that there's another Atlantis somewhere nearby. Turns out there are hidden continents all around the world, and maybe we'll discover more of them in the future. In 1936, British Egyptologist Walter Bryan Emery found a small object in the desert that made people debate whether it was an elaborate stone model of a flying saucer or even a hyperdrive from a spaceship that belonged to some advanced civilization that visited the Earth. Emery spent years excavating sites along the Nile River Valley, especially in the huge ancient necropolis of Saqqara. He found countless treasures from ancient Egypt, and the most bizarre one was definitely from the tomb of a high official, Sabu. Historians don't know exactly who he was for sure. Some sources say he was a king's son. His burial at Saqqara means he was an important figure in the royal court. There are no records from this early period he lived in, so Sabu's role and fate are still a mystery. Inside his tomb, scientists found 7 funerary chambers, each filled with traditional grave goods: animal bones, flint tools, pottery, ivory objects, and stone bowls. And then there was a strange, broken artifact that became famous as the Disc of Sabu. It resembles a shallow, round-bottomed bowl, but with 3 delicately carved, curved lobes spaced roughly 120 degrees apart around its perimeter. These lobes are separated by 3 holes, and at the center, there's a thin tube. The material used to build the disc is meta-siltstone, or schist. This type of rock is fragile, highly porous, and super difficult to carve. It flakes easily and crumbles under pressure. So how they made the disc out of it with rather simple stone and copper tools from 3000 BCE is still a mystery. The next big question is why they decided to bury Sabu with it. Perhaps if we knew its true purpose, it would make more sense. When it was first discovered, archaeologists thought it was nothing more than a vase, an incense burner, or a ceremonial decoration. But those who took a closer look from the point of view of an engineer decided it could actually be a component of a larger mechanism. An amateur historian made an exact copy of the artifact with a 3D printer, and it turned out that the Disc of Sabu was an ancient impeller, a crucial part of a centrifugal pump. When they put it in a housing and span at high speeds using the small central shaft, the disc was able to displace water. When it was tested without a housing, the disc created a powerful vortex. It became clear that the curved lobes and slightly concave shape of the disc weren't random. It was probably all engineered to move water with remarkable efficiency, like a powerful pump mechanism. Ancient Egypt's entire civilization depended on irrigation. Later dynasties perfected basin irrigation and managed to control the rise and fall of the Nile to take the most from agriculture. So, the engineers of the first dynasty may have been experimenting with advanced irrigation techniques thousands of years earlier than scientists previously thought. But then again, some people have doubts schist is strong enough to be used for a pumping mechanism. They suggest that artisans from Egypt's first dynasty were trying to recreate an even older object, using whatever tools and materials they had. It could be a stone replica of something originally made from metal, possibly belonging to a civilization far older and more advanced than ancient Egypt itself. One Swiss author takes this idea even further and proposes that the disc is a copy of a component from an extraterrestrial spaceship's hyperdrive, or stone model of a flying saucer. One French researcher believes the Disc of Sabu was part of a secret massive factory system to manufacture sodium carbonate inside pyramids. Some people suggest that the disc may have been a primitive tool for weaving ropes. The lobes held strands of silk or fiber that were twisted into twine when it was spun. Or it may have been a gigantic lamp. Another historical mystery is a map from 1513 that is believed to be the oldest surviving detailed map showing the Americas. The author of the map is a Turkish captain, Piri Reis. He never crossed the ocean himself and put together this map from 20 regional maps. He used an Arab map of India, 4 Portuguese maps showing India and China, and a map of America by Christopher Columbus as he saw it. This last map was lost for many years, so Reis's map gave us an idea of what Columbus must have recorded during his 3rd voyage to the New World. A historian who studied the map suggested that it showed Antarctica in prehistoric times because it strangely resembled Antarctica's true coastline, the way it looked when it was free of ice. But it was later proven that this idea wasn't right. Another idea that rocked the science world was Klerksdorp spheres. They were found in deposits of mineral pyrophyllite in South Africa and looked like tiny ancient cricket balls with lines around the middle. Back in the 1980s, there was a theory that some super advanced pre-flood civilization we know nothing about had made these spheres. One journalist shared stories about how they rotated on their own in a display case. There was also a TV show that invited a psychic who was telling everyone the spheres were pieces of an ancient spaceship. But according to geologists, these spheres are pretty regular spherical objects formed from different minerals than the surrounding rock. The seam-like lines on them are just imprints from the host rock's layers building up over time. The Klerksdorp spheres come in different shapes, from flattened spheres to distinct discs. As for that episode when one of these spheres spun on its own, the curator of the Klerksdorp Museum cleared that up too. He said that when he put one sphere on its glass shelf when the journalist came to visit, the sphere rotated a bit because it's round. There are some gold mining activities going on nearby, so the land where the museum stands often experiences earth tremors. In a remote part of China, there are some bizarre pipe-like formations, known as the Baigong Pipes. A local explorer found them back in 1996 protruding from Mount Baigong and along the shores of Tosan Lake nearby. Some people thought they were the work of ancient guests from other planets. When scientists tested samples of the pipe material, they found out that they contained mostly common minerals, but there was a mysterious 8% of unknown stuff. Some extra tests showed that these pipes had been there before humans. Chinese geologists later visited the site and suggested that these pipes were formed naturally over time. It was probably fossilized tree roots from the area's super green past. It's still a real mystery with no clear-cut answer. While digging a trench along a river in Romania, workers found a wedge, which is now famous as the aluminum wedge of Ajud, or the object of Ajud. Right next to it, there were some mastodon bones. Those distant relatives of elephants lived 11,000 years ago. So some people concluded the wedge is of the same age. The cool part is that it's made of aluminum, but this metal wasn't discovered until the 1800s. This material requires serious heat to produce. The wedge is said to be covered in a thick layer of oxide that's been sitting there for hundreds of years. Some folks believe this wedge must have crash-landed here on a spacecraft from some other planet. Some scientists think it's all a hoax, and others suppose it might be a human-made object with an unknown purpose. A Portuguese archaeologist just discovered a bunch of sunken ships filled with gold, including a Spanish galleon with 22 tons of gold and silver. This much gold today is worth about $2 billion, and this is the money from one ship alone. Archaeologist Alexandre Monteiro made this discovery almost by accident. He was studying some documents when he found some information about a ship that went missing in 1615, and he decided he wanted to find it. After many years, Alexandre found not just this specific ship, he actually discovered 8,620 shipwrecks in the waters of Portugal alone. Out of this number, 250 are gold-filled shipwrecks, a discovery that would make any Jack Sparrow shake in his boots. Most of these ships went down for boring reasons like the weather, but sometimes they were destroyed in battles, which may or may not have been super epic. They were carrying gold and other treasures from the New World to Europe, and of course, everyone wanted a share. Alexandre had been studying historical shipwrecks for 30 years now, so he has discovered many ships that went down in somewhat glorious ways. In 1816, for example, a ship of one of the richest men in Portugal sank in Australia, with an insane amount of 66,000 silver coins. This was the first ship from Portugal to ever plunge in the waters of Australia. The bad news is that these ancient sunken vessels, filled with riches and epic stories, are not so easy to reach. They're deep down in the ocean and covered by sand. You could still try, but that would be stealing part of a country's history, and you wouldn't want to be that person, would you? Naturally, Portugal was not the only country that explored the seas back then. The coast of Europe is packed with sunken ships filled with gold. In fact, there are about 1 million historical shipwrecks underwater right now, and the treasures abandoned under the sea might be worth around $60 billion. It's an insane amount of money, but let me tell you that these gold-filled sunken ships aren't really worth the hassle. There are many stories of maritime treasure discoveries that turned into insane lawsuits and even long jail time. Our first story starts in 1746, when a violent storm crashed a ship called Prince de Conti near an island in Brittany. The ship was filled with tea, ceramics, and 100 gold ingots. Of course, the owners of the ship tried to save the loot, but if it's not easy now, imagine how it was back in the 18th century. It took more than 200 years for the vessel to be found. It finally happened in 1975, when a group of French men discovered it and decided to take pretty much every valuable thing they could find. Now, I said these things were not worth the trouble for a reason. In France, if you find anything that can be historical, you must declare it to the local authorities within 48 hours. Fail to comply, and you will be committing something known as a crime. To be fair, our French friends here did declare their findings, but only the corroded cannons from the ship. And the gold? Well, they sold it. Obviously, because each gold bar is worth between $125,000 to $231,000. It took French authorities almost 50 years to retrieve the stolen gold, and they didn't retrieve all of it. Part of it was bought by an elderly couple living in Florida, and the crime is so serious they were charged for connection with money laundering, organized crime, and the trafficking of cultural goods. The poachers also sold some gold ingots to the British Museum collection. Now, let's go back to the 1850s, when a steamer called SS Central America traveled from Panama to California and back again. This was during the Californian Gold Rush, a time when 300,000 people moved to California to dig for gold. Because the travel route was not easy breezy, people needed to carry their gold around on big ships. This is where our friend SS Central America comes in. In 1857, the ship had 578 people on board and about 10 tons of gold. Very few survived, and around $100 to $150 million in gold went down with the ship. All of this explains why in 1988, a group of investors from Columbus decided to finance a research project to find this ship. The research was led by a guy named Tommy Thompson. Tommy was really crazy about the idea of finding this sunken ship filled with gold. It took him years to find the exact location of the SS Central America, especially because the ship was 7,500 feet beneath the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, and retrieving it required a lot of fancy tech. A group of 161 investors paid for his adventure, but it goes without saying that they were not doing this out of love from their hearts. They invested $12.5 million in this project because they were expecting to earn at least 10 times more. But since life is not all sunshine and rainbows, 39 insurance companies sued the research team as soon as they retrieved the gold. Back when the ship was up and running, these companies insured the cargo of the SS Central America, and when the cargo was finally retrieved, more than 100 years later, they wanted to be compensated. They said it was not their job to retrieve it, but that doesn't mean they abandoned it. This crazy talk didn't stick, and 92% of the gold was given to the research team. The plot thickened when the investors were scammed by none other than Tommy Thompson, who fled with $4.16 million. He also had 500 gold coins, but he's not telling a soul where they are. Nonsense like this is the reason why most countries have rules to protect cultural properties. And yes, sometimes shipwrecks can be a cultural property. Obviously, there are many maritime treasure discoveries that happen without breaking any laws. The SS City of Cairo, for example, was a steamship that submerged in 1929 with 2,000 boxes of silver coins weighing 122 tons. A company called Deep Ocean Search retrieved the coins from a depth of 17,000 feet, which is 4,500 feet lower than the Titanic. 34 million pounds went to the UK Treasury, and the Deep Ocean Search also got a share. The good news here is that some of the coins can be bought by collectors, legally. Paying for a treasure is probably the closest you can get to an underwater archaeology find. I know, all I did was destroy your piracy dreams. But while raiding gold-filled shipwrecks may be a crime in most countries, or just financially impossible for us mere mortals, not all hope is lost. There is about $771 trillion worth of gold lying on the ocean floor, and it doesn't have an owner. It's like an underwater gold mine, except the gold is in the water. You know how the water of the ocean is salty? Well, the gold gets mixed with the minerals in the water, so it's not like you stumble upon a gold nugget on the beach. Each liter of ocean water has 13 billionths of a gram of gold, and it's very difficult to extract such tiny particles of gold from the water. But that doesn't mean people haven't tried, and of course, there's been a scam here too. In the 1890s, a guy claimed he had invented a thing that would suck gold from the seawater. When he got enough money, he fled the country with the cash. If you really want to get some gold, you could try to extract it from the Earth's core, which has 1.6 quadrillion tons of gold. There's 16 times more gold in the Earth's core than what humans have mined in the whole of history. No hoax involved here, because nobody has dared to go down there yet. With archaeologists discovering gold-filled sunken ships out and about, maybe we can make our own maritime treasure discoveries, or at least save enough money to buy some silver coins. We all grew up believing that Stonehenge is the world's most ancient observatory, but now it has some serious competition for the title. Nabta Playa was built more than 2,000 miles away in southern Egypt, and thousands of years before Stonehenge and even the pyramids of Giza. In 1973, a Bedouin guide stumbled upon a strange group of huge stone formations while crossing the Sahara Desert. He led American archaeologist Fred Wendorf to the site, located about 60 miles from the Nile. Wendorf's friend and colleague claims the team found the stones while stopping for a bathroom break in the desert. Either way, what they found changed history. At first, Wendorf thought the stone structures were just natural formations. But then it hit him. This area was once a lake, meaning no natural rocks should even be there. He kept coming back to the site for decades, and by the early 1990s, his team finally uncovered a circle of stones that seemed to line up with the stars in a way no one could explain. After 7 long years of trying to crack the mystery of the site, Wendorf reached out to an expert in archaeoastronomy. They study how ancient people used the stars. One evening, while the expert sat in the cool desert sand staring at the stones, he realized that they formed a pattern radiating outward from a massive burial mound. One by one, as they dug into the sediment, the buried megaliths started lining up like spokes on a wheel. The team had already used radiocarbon dating to test samples from fire hearths and tamarisk wood roofing found inside the stone circle. Nabta Playa had dozens of standing stones, all a few feet tall. Some of them lined up exactly with the sunrise on special days, and others matched up with bright stars in the sky. Inside the big circle, there were 6 special stones that may have been used for rituals or marking important times of the year. Around them, 29 standing stones might have worked like a simple calendar to help people know when it was time for something important, like the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. When the sun rose in just the right spot, it was a sign that the rainy season was coming. The stone circle once aligned with the brightest stars in the northern sky: Arcturus, Sirius, and Alpha Centauri. Some stones even pointed to the constellation Orion. By tracing Arcturus's movement across the sky, they figured out that it matched perfectly with the circle around 4800 BCE. That means it was the oldest astronomical site ever discovered. And the people of Nabta Playa may have been watching the stars thousands of years before telescopes were even invented. It looks like it had a huge meaning for people living and traveling through the desert. Over 10,000 years ago, the long, cold, and dry ice age that lasted for tens of thousands of years was finally fading away. Northern Africa got massive monsoons and rains that filled up seasonal lakes. So, parts of the desert turned into short-lived oases. For the nomadic people who roamed this harsh land, these summer rains were everything. Their entire way of life revolved around cattle. When archaeologists opened the central tomb at Nabta Playa, they dug up cattle bones and even a massive rock carved into the shape of a cow. The people who built it used the stars to guide them and find hidden watering holes like Nabta Playa, which likely held water for about 4 months a year, starting with the summer monsoons. But there was no North Star back then, so instead they navigated using bright stars and the way the sky seemed to spin in circles above them. When the lakes were full, the standing stones would be partly submerged, and from the western shore, you would see the reflection of the stars on the dark water. Nabta Playa is way less famous than Stonehenge, perhaps because its stones were buried and the famous site in England was open to visitors for thousands of years. Sadly, when Nabta Playa did become famous, some tourists ruined parts of it by moving stones around, which messed up the ancient star alignments. To protect it, the authorities moved everything to a museum where people can see the stones and the carved cow statue without damaging them. The Egyptian Observatory isn't the only construction similar to Stonehenge. It has versions that were used for different purposes from Germany and France to the US and the Andes in northern Peru. This last one is actually one of the oldest big structures ever built in this region. The circular plaza is made of 2 giant stone walls arranged in a ring. It was likely used for ceremonies and gatherings. Scientists have carbon dated it to be about 4,750 years old, which means it was built before the Great Pyramids of Egypt and Stonehenge. The plaza had 2 entrances and a special layer of clay, soil, gravel, and charcoal underneath. It was carefully planned and built. Archaeologists also found ceramic pieces, quartz crystals, and gemstones at the site, so it was definitely a special place. People visited it for centuries, but at some point it was sealed off, probably because of changing beliefs and traditions. The most recent discovery was the remains of a large timber circle roughly the same age and with parallels to Stonehenge, all the way up in Denmark. This open-air structure was likely part of a special area where prehistoric people from the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age gathered for rituals and ceremonies. The circle was made up of 45 giant wooden posts, forming a huge ring about 100 feet wide. The wood is gone now, but scientists believe tall timbers once stood in the holes and created an impressive wood henge. No one knows exactly what these circles were used for, but archaeologists have found animal bones and food remains at similar sites. So people probably used to gather there for feasts and rituals. In 2024, scientists found 2 ancient stone circles from the Neolithic period in Dartmoor National Park in England. Some archaeologists believe they might form a sacred ark. Many of Dartmoor's stone structures were built in a curved shape on the high ground in the center of the area. A long time ago, Dartmoor was covered in forests, so people may have used the high ground as important markers. One of the newly found circles fits inside this ark, but the other one is outside of it, to the north. This could have been an entrance point into the ark. There's also a raised bank of earth near the stones, which looks similar to other famous Neolithic sites, like the Ring of Brodgar in Scotland and Stonehenge itself. This means the people who built these circles may have visited Stonehenge or been inspired by it. Archaeologists in Oman found ancient stone monuments called tralith, which got the nickname Arabian Stonehenge. They were finished about 2,000 years ago, but no one knows for sure who built them or why. Scientists also found stone hand axes that are incredibly old, between 300,000 and 1.3 million years old, from the time when the first humans left Africa. At another site in central Oman, archaeologists discovered a Neolithic tomb from around 5000 to 4600 BCE. There are 2 chambers with the bones of dozens of people inside beneath a giant megalithic structure. Nearby, they also discovered rock carvings that were made by people who lived in the area. And then there is another Stonehenge look-alike, this time in Saudi Arabia, that was used as an apartment complex thousands of years ago. Archaeologists discovered a total of 345 stone circles by looking at aerial photos of a lava field. Each circle is between 13 to 26 feet and has at least one large standing stone in the middle. These structures still have remains of stone walls and doorways. Stone circles like Stonehenge are often linked to ceremonies and rituals, but scientists say that many early houses were actually built in round shapes, and rectangular homes only became common much later in history. A ship filled with gold and other treasures worth over $13 million was found in the middle of the Namibian desert after almost 500 years. The worker who found it was actually looking for diamonds, but ended up with something way more valuable for history. There were some blocks of copper, some wood, pipes, and elephant tusks. The miners called for an archaeologist, who soon realized it wasn't a disturbed beach like they thought, but a shipwreck. All evidence showed that it was a Portuguese trading vessel, Bom Jesus, that went missing in the 16th century. Experts believe it was a special kind of ship that was bigger, stronger, and better than older ships from Portugal and Spain. These ships were built to take Portuguese explorers on long trips to distant places like India, China, and Japan, and come back with tons of cargo. The Bom Jesus was likely carrying treasures from Lisbon, Portugal, to Western India. But it looks like on its way around the southern tip of Africa, near Namibia, a big storm pushed the ship too close to the shore. The ship hit a rock, tipped over, and broke apart, sinking into the ocean. Archaeologists found treasure from the captain's chest under the water, which probably fell out when the ship's wooden hull broke. They also found pieces of the ship scattered along the shore, likely from the violent storm and later by construction in the area. The storm must have been very fierce, but they didn't find many bones, which means most of the crew may have survived or were lost at sea. The ship was split into 3 sections and incredibly well preserved, thanks to the thick layers of sand that covered it and prevented rot. Archaeologists who studied the wreck discovered over 40 tons of cargo. There were cannons, swords, blocks of metal like lead and tin, fabrics, and tools that sailors used to navigate the stars while traveling across the ocean. The most exciting discovery was 1,845 copper ingots, weighing as much as 16 to 17 tons altogether. Those copper ingots, or pieces of pure metal, are still in great condition because the hull of the ship and layers of sand protected them from ocean water. The scientists even managed to read the trademarks on them on site and learned they were made by a super wealthy German trading company. There were also more than 2,000 shiny gold and silver coins from different countries, and 105 enormous elephant tusks weighing about 2 tons. The tusks were likely supposed to become luxury items, like jewelry or carvings at the destination. Archaeologists took some DNA samples from the tusks and found that they came from West African forests and savanna elephants. Researchers were lucky that the ship was found in a restricted diamond mining area. No scavengers were able to get their hands on the treasures. The Bom Jesus remains the oldest and most valuable shipwreck that was ever discovered off the western coast of sub-Saharan Africa. Another shipwreck recently found by accident was buried under a 10-foot tall sand dune near the Caspian Sea. Some people call it the world's largest lake, and it has water levels that rise and fall over time because of the changes in weather patterns. These changes can move sand and uncover things like this shipwreck and other treasures along the coast. As the dune slowly disappeared, the ship started to show. Before digging it out, scientists worried that waves from the sea might damage the wreck. To protect it, they built a wall using thousands of sandbags to keep the waves away. When the ship was uncovered, they discovered it was a 3-masted, 92-foot-long merchant ship with a strong double hull. Wood samples showed the ship was built in the 18th to 19th century using trees like Scots pine, spruce, and larch from the Volga River area or the Caucasus. They even found buckwheat and plants from the same region, which were probably traded or used to feed the sailors. It proves that the ship was part of a group of merchant ships that once sailed the Caspian Sea. An amateur fisherman who was 20 feet under the sea off the coast of Turkey noticed some huge metal remains. He had an underwater camera, so he made footage of the discovery and took it to scientists. They immediately started an investigation and learned that it must be a shipwreck from the first decades of the 20th century. It could be one of the Ottoman Empire ships that had an important mission to deliver supplies, but disappeared without a trace. Scientists got permission to study this Black Sea wreck in detail to learn more about its mysteries. They're hoping to find its shipyard documents to find some answers, as the ship itself is in terrible condition and is tricky to work with. Robot submersibles that belong to an oil and gas company noticed hundreds of intact ancient storage jars sitting on the seabed in the eastern Mediterranean. Experts think those jars are 3,300 years old. This makes the find the oldest shipwreck from the deep sea. The jugs were probably used to store oil or other agricultural products like fruit. This proves that the people who made them organized maritime trade and had incredible navigational skills. It looks like the ancient mariners managed to traverse the Mediterranean Sea without a line of sight to any coast. All they could see was the horizon, so they must have used the sun and other stars to find their way. Off the coast of Sicily, under 20 feet of sand and rock, archaeologists found a shipwreck so old that they aren't even sure what materials were used to build it. They think the ship is from the 5th or 6th century BCE, which means it's over 2,500 years old. This ancient ship wasn't alone. Researchers also found 2 iron anchors shaped like an upside-down T from around the 7th century of the Common Era, and 4 stone anchors from prehistoric times nearby. One of the stone anchors was broken and may have had wooden pieces attached to help it hold on to the seafloor. They figured out that the ship itself was built using the on-shell technique. The wooden planks of the ship were connected so tightly that they could support the ship on their own, with extra beams added just to make it stronger. Sadly, the ship's wooden hull is very fragile now because tiny sea creatures that eat wood have damaged it over the years. Scientists are being extra careful as they study it to make sure it doesn't fall apart. This discovery is such a big deal because it was built during a time when Sicily was super important for trade. Back then, the Greeks and Punics were trying to take control of the seas long before Rome became the ruler of the Mediterranean. By studying this ship, scientists hope to learn more about how people traveled and traded in those ancient times. One more shipwreck, this time off the coast of Kenya. Could be from Vasco da Gama's final voyage. This Portuguese explorer was the first European to reach India by sea around the Cape of Good Hope. Local fishermen discovered the shipwreck in question in 2013. When an underwater archaeologist came to check it out, he found some treasures at the spot: elephant tusks and valuable copper ingots. If this find really has to do with Vasco da Gama, then it must be from the 16th century. It was the year of his 3rd and final voyage to India. Da Gama led a huge fleet of 20 ships, one of which was the São Jorge. Most of the ship is hidden under layers of coral, and a whole team of scientists are carefully digging trenches to find parts of the ship's wooden frame and hull. This is not a dune set. This is a very real desert in Niger. Jado was probably built by the nomadic Sao people and is filled with czars, which are fortified houses made of salt and clay, with giant walls and secret passages. Located deep in the desert, it was once a vital stop for trans-Saharan caravans, but is now a hotspot for smugglers and bandits. The site has been off-limits since 2002 due to its dangers. The origin of the Khazars remain a mystery. No archaeological studies have been conducted, leaving many questions unanswered. Even today, shifting sands reveal and conceal parts of these ancient ruins, fueling local speculation about what might still be hidden beneath the desert. Speaking of connective tunnels, scientists were blown away by the discovery of lava tubes in Saudi Arabia. These underground passages form when molten lava cools down. Researchers believe that ancient nomadic groups may have utilized these tunnels to survive the super harsh desert climates. While excavating the tunnels, archaeologists uncovered artifacts, rock art, and skeletal remains. The art and animal bones show that the people who used the tunnels were probably sheep and goat herders. They're still piecing together whether these groups lived in the tunnels for extended periods or just used them as temporary shelters. The Great Pyramid of Giza has been standing for thousands of years, but it's still hiding secrets. Using special scanning technology, scientists found two hidden structures under an ancient burial ground. The first is a shallow L-shaped structure, and below it is a much larger space that could be a final resting place or a chamber. The smaller structure was filled with sand on purpose, while the deeper one might be an empty chamber. Experts believe the two are connected, possibly as an entrance leading to a secret chamber. This is big news because it might give us some more insight into who built the pyramids and why. The world is full of ancient writing, but some messages refuse to give up their secrets, like the mystery of the Bashplemi tablet. This unusual stone, pulled from a lake in Georgia, is covered in symbols no one can read. Even with modern technology, experts are completely stumped. The tablet is about the size of a book, with 60 symbols carefully carved into its surface, but 39 of them don't match any known language. Some resemble scripts from ancient civilizations in the Middle East, India, and Egypt, but none are an exact match. To make things even trickier, part of the tablet is broken off, meaning a piece of the puzzle is missing forever. To rule out a hoax, scientists studied the tablet closely. They confirmed it's made of vesicular basalt, an extremely tough local rock. Whoever carved these symbols must have been really skilled. Based on similar archaeological finds, experts believe the tablet could date back thousands of years, possibly to the late Bronze or early Iron Age. Some symbols repeat, which could mean they're numbers. Maybe it's an inventory list, a record of battles, or even an offering to the deities. Until someone cracks the code, the Bashplemi tablet remains an unsolved mystery from the depths of history. Experts are still stumped with what this Minoan disc might mean. The Phaistos disc is one of the most mysterious finds from the Minoan civilization. This 6-inch clay object, discovered in 1908, has strange spiral markings that no one has fully decoded yet. The disc has 241 symbols on both sides, showing everything from people and animals to tools and plants. Experts have come up with many theories about what the symbols mean. Some think it's an early form of Greek. Others suggest it's a prayer or a hymn. And some even believe it could be a letter from a king in Anatolia to a Greek ruler. Let's see who will be the first to figure this out. It's always a fun day at an archaeologist's office when they find something as big as a 2,000-year-old marble head. A French archaeologist mission went digging inside an old medieval house near Alexandria in Egypt and found a statue's head depicting an old, possibly ill man. This statue dates from the last Egyptian dynasty before it became part of the Roman Empire, and the site where it was found is associated with the likes of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. For archaeologists, even the smallest finds at this site means a lot. You've heard of Lucy, right? The Australopithecus that was an early ancestor for us humans. Well, scientists found some of her species' footprints somewhere in Tanzania. The so-called Laetoli footprints are over 3 million years old. The trail stretched 88 feet and has about 70 footprints, left behind when a bunch of early humans walked across some wet volcanic ash. What's cool is that these early humans were already walking on 2 feet, like us, not all hunched over like apes. The close spacing of the prints shows they probably had short legs and a shorter stride than we do today. In an ancient Egyptian temple, archaeologists uncovered a shrine unlike any other, a place dedicated to falcons and 2 mysterious deities. One deity had a falcon's head, while the other wore a crown with a sun disk and cow horns. But the most baffling discovery was an inscription that read, "It is improper to boil a head in here." At the heart of the shrine, there are 15 headless falcons carefully arranged on a pedestal, likely as offerings to the falcon-headed deity. One theory suggests the birds were boiled first, perhaps to pluck their feathers, before being placed in the shrine, following the strange rule carved into stone. Archaeologists also found a 13-inch iron harpoon nearby. Its true purpose remains unknown, although the shrine also held remains of fish, mammals, and bird eggs, suggesting that the rituals may have included feasting. And speaking of ancient Egypt, meet Hathor. Scientists named her after the ancient Egyptian deity of motherhood, music, and singing. This wooden statue, housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was thought to be just a beautiful artifact, until a surprising secret was uncovered. Using an X-ray machine, experts found a mechanical operating system inside it, with pulleys and axles connecting her shoulder to her left leg. When activated, the system made her hand raise and lower, an engineering marvel from over 3,000 years ago. The statue was created during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BCE, and is often compared to 19th century automata due to its advanced design. It's believed the statue was used in religious ceremonies, symbolizing Hathor's role in dance and music. An unexpected discovery happened in northern Kuwait, where a Kuwaiti-Polish team uncovered a mysterious 7,500-year-old statue. The statue features an elongated skull, no mouth, narrow eyes, and a flattened nose. This feature is thought to be an Ophidian figurine, named after the Greek word for snake, and it was likely made by the Ubaid culture, a civilization known for their pottery skills. While no one knows exactly what role this weird statue played, it might have been linked to rituals or symbolic practices. Some scientists think these figurines, found in homes or final resting places, were tied to important cultural beliefs. We couldn't mention unresolved mysteries of this world without speaking about these elongated skulls. In the deserts of Peru, researchers uncovered 5 ancient skeletons, 2 with unnaturally elongated skulls. While head shaping was common in many cultures, these skulls defy explanation. Local legends tell tales of the so-called Gentiles, a mysterious race banished underground by the powerful deities. Some say this is what the skulls represent. Others think this is some type of genetic anomaly, which was confirmed after finding an infant skull, too large to be artificially shaped.
They found the tomb of a royal doctor who lived over 4,000 years ago, a man who held pharaohs' lives in his hands. This man knew secrets that only deities and kings were allowed to hear. And yet, when they opened his tomb in 2024, there was no body, just vivid paintings untouched by time and cryptic symbols carved into stone. Who was he, and why was he buried with spells linked to a scorpion deity? The tomb was buried deep beneath the sands of Saqqara. The doctor's name was Teti Nebu. He lived around 4,100 years ago during one of Egypt's most mysterious turning points, right at the edge of glory and collapse. These were the final days of Egypt's Old Kingdom. The sun still glinted off freshly built pyramids, but the shadows were already creeping in. The pharaoh, Pepi II, had ruled longer than anyone before him, 90 years. But by the end of his reign, the country was cracking. The power was slipping, the regional leaders were rising, and the Nile floods grew unpredictable. In this shaky period, the mysterious doctor thrived. His tomb was discovered by a Swiss-French archaeological team in the shadows of old pyramids. The weirdest part was that when they uncovered his burial chamber, they found no body, no golden treasures either. Unfortunately, the tomb had been robbed long ago. But what remained was something even more fascinating: the words and images left on the walls. The paintings are still vibrant, bright colors that somehow survived all those years underground. The walls show jars, containers, strange abstract patterns, and geometric shapes. And then there are hieroglyphs, lines and lines of sacred script carved with precision, like someone had poured their soul into every curve. These inscriptions revealed who Teti Nebu truly was. Turns out, he wasn't just any doctor. He was the conjurer of Serket. Now, Serket was the female deity of scorpions, sacred and terrifying. Egyptians believed she could stop venom, heal bites, and protect the living from toxic elements. The title, Conjurer of Serket, meant Teti Nebu was a specialist in treating dangerous stings and bites. And if he got an entire tomb for himself, he may have been Egypt's top expert in those things, a man who healed with both medicine and magic. But that wasn't all. He also held the title Director of Medicinal Plants, a title seen only once before in all of ancient Egypt. That means he knew the healing power of herbs, roots, and oils like no one else. Now, you might wonder, what plants in a huge land of sand? But in reality, ancient Egyptians used herbal medicine that would hold up in some labs today. They created pills, ointments, and inhalers. Most often, they chose some active ingredient, a flavor to make it easier to take, and something to deliver it into the body. Sound familiar? And yeah, they didn't have many traditional plants, so some of these ingredients were bizarre by our standards, like using crocodile dung and acacia mixed with honey. They even had formulas for anti-wrinkle creams. And apparently, our mysterious healer was also chief dentist. This title is almost never seen in ancient records. Evidence of Egyptian dentists is incredibly rare. Turns out, our ancient genius didn't just fight stings and study plants. He was also trusted with teeth and jaws, which were actually a huge problem in ancient Egypt. These people may have built wonders, but their teeth paid the price. Ancient Egyptians constantly caught grains of sand in their mouths. They often ate grit-filled bread and raw vegetables, which wore down enamel and caused a horrible condition called attrition. This led to tons of problems, including tooth loss. They had to improvise back in the day. For example, crafting the world's oldest known toothpaste from crushed rock, mint, and pepper, which ironically only made things worse for the gums. Or a toothpaste from things like eggshells, pumice, and natron, a salty mineral used for cleaning. They were also inventing mouthwashes from celery, bran, and herbs to ease the problem. Some mummies were even found with crude metal braces and gold wires attaching missing teeth. Though we're not sure if these were for the living, or was it just a nice little addition added as an afterlife gift. So, Teti Nebu specialized in all these fields. 3 rare titles for one man. Now, back in the day, he must have been admired as incredibly knowledgeable. In a world without modern science, he would have been like a sorcerer who knows how some leaf or bark could save a life. That's why archaeologists believe Teti Nebu wasn't just any doctor. He was, most likely, the royal physician, the one who treated the pharaoh himself. We don't know for sure which king he served. Maybe it was Pepi II, and who knows, maybe that's why the guy lived so long. But if that was the case, Teti Nebu may have lived through the final moments of the Old Kingdom, watching the Golden Age crumble from inside the palace walls. And then he was buried. The body was looted, or perhaps just lost to time. But the team says they're still studying the tomb, still uncovering the traces of this incredible man. Overall, ancient Egyptians were practicing medicine on a crazy advanced level. Some practices feel familiar even today. They had hospitals, specialists, surgeries, and many more things, even medical schools. Both men and women were allowed to be doctors. They healed with various methods and practiced surgery with actual tools, scalpels, forceps, even sutures. Some doctors treated only the eyes, others the teeth, the stomach, or even what they called the hidden diseases. They knew how to clean and dress wounds, could set broken bones using splints made of wood or reeds wrapped in linen, and even prevented infections. There were even proctologists. They also built the first prosthetics, like a wooden toe with leather straps that help people walk normally again. The oldest known prosthetic is 3,000 years old. Now, the most shocking part is how they actually even tried to remove tumors. A recent study looked at a 4,000 years old skull. It belonged to a man in his 30s. There were signs of past tumors, and around 3 of them, there were marks, surgical cuts made with a metal tool. That suggests someone attempted to remove or study them, maybe treatment, maybe an autopsy. There was another skull of a woman over 50 years old. It also showed similar signs, but with healed fractures from an earlier injury, which is amazing because her treatment might have actually been successful. Being a healer in this society meant something powerful. It meant being a priest, a scientist, and a magician all at once. To ancient Egyptians, medicine was a necessary art, and they treated it with as much reverence as they did their deities. That's because they believed that sickness could be both physical and spiritual. So a doctor could recite a spell while applying a salve, and a lot of their treatments worked. The reputation of doctors in ancient Egypt was so strong that leaders from other parts of the ancient world, like Persia, actually sought them out. Even Homer, the Greek poet, once said the Egyptians were the most skilled healers of all. Of course, their understanding of the human body wasn't perfect. For example, they thought the heart controlled thought and emotion. They also didn't know what the brain really did. But their approach, observe symptoms, diagnose, and treat, well, that's modern medicine. Sure, they prayed over the wound, but they also healed it, didn't they? Their most famous physician was Imhotep. That guy was a true polymath, an architect, priest, and a healer who became so revered he was later worshipped as a deity of medicine. Yep, a human who was so cool they turned him into a deity. He lived 2,000 years before Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine. And yet, some people joke we should drop the Hippocratic Oath altogether and swear an Imhotepic Oath instead. These people weren't just laying the foundations of pyramids, they were laying the foundations of healthcare. Stonehenge took approximately 20 million man-hours to build. For comparison, an average human doesn't live much over 700,000 hours. This is Jack, one of the first builders of Stonehenge. Let's say Jack lived to be 80 years old, which is extremely improbable, but it makes it easier for me to crunch the numbers, thanks. If Jack had spent his entire life, from age 0 to age 80, working on the Stonehenge project, it would have required approximately 28.5 generations of people doing the same thing to complete it. That's next to impossible. To make it more plausible, let's multiply that by 2. After all, Jack wouldn't want to dedicate his entire life to moving stones, and he didn't live to be that old. Thus, we arrive at around 57 generations needed to build Stonehenge. That's not enough room on the screen for me to introduce John, Jack's great-great-great-great, you get the drift, grandson. So it all began around 5,000 years ago with just a simple circular earthen bank and ditch. Fast forward to around 26,000 BCE, and the builders replaced that initial structure with a complex arrangement of wooden posts and brought in around 80 dolerite bloom stones from Wales, which were rearranged at least 3 times. Then, a few hundred years later, they added those massive sarsen stones, each weighing around 25 tons. These enormous sandstone blocks were transported about 19 miles to create a continuous outer circle, with 5 trilithons, 2 upright stones topped with a lintel, forming a horseshoe shape inside. It was a millennium-long building process that demanded years of hard work. So, people must have lived nearby, right? But how would they have found shelter back then? Today, we have houses for builders on site, small accommodations that serve as temporary housing. But structures like this definitely didn't exist when Stonehenge was constructed, did they? Well, actually, they existed, and some recent archaeological digs near Stonehenge prove it. Archaeologists found this Stone Age eco-home, which is a huge deal since it's one of the earliest settlements in the area. This newly uncovered Mesolithic home dates back to around the year 4300 BCE. Let's take a closer look at this house, shall we? Now, for the walls, people back then used a large fallen tree, its trunk to be more precise. These wooden walls were reinforced with flint, and they even lined the pit left by the uprooted tree with cobblestones. To create the roof, they opted for animal hides, which sounds like a wise choice. They must have provided protection against the unpredictable weather of the British Isles. Now, you might be wondering, the weather in Britain is indeed unpredictable, and it has been that way since time immemorial. So, how did the builders manage throughout most of the year, particularly during the winter months? Well, the answer is simple. There was a hearth on site, which isn't surprising, but the system they employed was quite ingenious. A hearth inside the house would have posed too great a risk, yet bringing hot stones into the dwelling was perfectly safe. While they were hot, they couldn't ignite the building. So they used these stones from the hearth as a heat storage system to keep warm at night. And as a final touch, they even incorporated various stones for decoration. They didn't exactly get a Pinterest house, but it added a touch of elegance for sure. And if you think this discovery is merely about the houses, think again. It significantly changes our understanding of how people lived during that time. This discovery places them in an important prehistoric setting right at the start of the Neolithic area, sparking some interesting questions about whether these early folks could be related to the people who built Stonehenge. But there's a big worry. Experts are concerned that this significant find, along with other buried archaeological sites, could be at risk if the authorities go ahead with plans to build a tunnel to reroute the A303 away from the World Heritage Site. Sure thing the house the scientists found wasn't in perfect shape, and it lacked some crucial elements people used for living. Some of them decayed over time, while others were simply absent. So the scientists took 20 tons of chalk, 5,000 hazel rods, and 3 tons of straw, and used all this to recreate the 4,500-year-old design houses. These new buildings are located close to Stonehenge, which is incredible since in this area, planning permission for even a new cowshed is problematic. So, what are these houses like? Well, first off, there are 4 of them, and they're oval-shaped. They're built on the foundation of real houses that stood there about 4,500 years ago, just around the time the Stonehenge Eco House was going up. The houses aren't very big, they're single-room structures. When it comes to dimensions, it was straightforward to estimate since we could gauge the size of the roof and the height of the walls based on the foundations. Each side measures about 16 feet. However, the roof structure remains a bit of a mystery. There were a few differing thatching techniques back then, so pinpointing the exact method used for these dwellings is kind of a guessing game. For now, we think it involves knotted or tied straw carefully secured onto a hazel-woven frame. When fires are lit, the smoke from the hearth wafts up through the thatched roof. Now, remember those 20 tons of chalk? That was needed for the floors and walls. The white chalk walls and floors reflect sunlight and capture heat from the fire. But here's the kicker. The builders encountered a challenge because the ground was so waterlogged that some of the chalk floors took weeks to dry out. By the time they should have been bone dry, they were still as sticky as chewing gum. Now, it's safe to say people 4,500 years ago faced similar struggles, and we can really appreciate what they went through while building their homes. The final layer of daub was applied using rags, giving a smooth, almost shiny finish that looks surprisingly classy. The interiors are furnished with wooden and wicker beds and shelves, along with clay pots and jars, all centered around a cozy hearth. The spaces feel surprisingly roomy and are filled with light that streams in through the thatched roof, bouncing off those white walls. Plus, the woven furniture adds a nice touch of authenticity to the vibe. The fires have been lit, and the first meal, bread crafted from flour ground on a stone mill next to the hearth, has been prepared. Those who tried the bread were pleasantly surprised by its flavor, finding it quite tasty. Now, here comes the bummer. Those who recreated the houses did cheat a little. While the materials used were authentic, the tools weren't. They used cement mixers to mix the daub, wheelbarrows to transport the timber, and logs by the hearth were split with steel axes instead of stone ones. Still, the builders aren't professionals, they're volunteers. So I think a bit of cheating is totally cool in this case. There are other volunteers on site who are more than happy to chat about the daily activities of the Stonehenge builders, from grinding grain with a quern to making rope from rushes. But these houses and the Eco House aren't the only remarkable things in the Stonehenge area. Some years ago, archaeologists uncovered a burial site close to Stonehenge that predates the monument itself. This Neolithic long barrow, dating back approximately 56 to 5,700 years, likely contains the remains of some of Britain's earliest inhabitants. The burial site was identified through aerial images that revealed its distinct shape beneath the crops. Salisbury Plain is rich with ancient sites, including Stonehenge, various mounds, and monuments. The area has remained undisturbed over the centuries, which is likely why so many ancient structures are still intact. This discovery also shows a significant shift in human lifestyle during that era, marking a transition from a nomadic existence to settled farming and animal husbandry, much like the Eco House itself. The long barrow in question measures about 85 feet long and 65 feet wide, though much of its above-ground structure has been lost to farming over the years. If this site is like others in the vicinity, it contains the remains of 30 to 50 individuals, along with cow skulls, which were significant to those early communities. Hey, you've heard of Stonehenge? Of course you have. Big rocks mysteriously mounted in circles on a plain in England by, somebody. But what if England's Stonehenge is only a replica of another monument, and its builders just crossed the Atlantic and copied what someone had already done elsewhere? Well, it turns out researchers found another Stonehenge underneath the waters of Lake Michigan. This lake is a hotspot for woo-woo unexplained things. A bunch of disappearances, plane crashes, and now this, an ancient underwater monument that looks strangely enough like Stonehenge. We couldn't help ourselves and needed to dive deep into this story. A ring of massive stones, arranged in a way that felt all too familiar. They saw two circles, an outer one and an inner one, sitting 40 feet below the surface. But this wasn't just a random pile of rocks. These stones had been placed there, purposefully, by human hands. And by doing some further research, they discovered that they were staring at a structure that's over 9,000 years old. Think about it. This Stonehenge beneath Lake Michigan predates the pyramids. It predates Stonehenge itself by about 4,000 years. All of this information was enough to startle scientists at Northwestern Michigan University. But that was before they found this out. One of the stones had a carving, a faint but clear petroglyph of a mastodon. Mastodons kind of look like the ancestors to our modern-day elephants, but they have been extinct on planet Earth since 10,000 years ago. So, whoever built this underwater Stonehenge needed to be alive at the same time these creatures roamed our planet. This discovery raised many questions among scientists. I mean, why on earth would they go through all this trouble to lay rocks at the bottom of a lake? Well, first things first. Scientists believe that Lake Michigan had much less water back then than it does now. Second, it could have something to do with ancestral practices of First Nation people. There's one theory from a professor of the University of Michigan. He suggested that the stones formed a kind of prehistoric hunting trap. He believes that early hunters used the circular formation as a drive lane to herd large animals like the mastodons from the rock carvings we were just talking about. Once they got these huge animals into a tighter circle, they could be more easily hunted. But not everyone's convinced by this theory. Some believe the circle probably had a deeper spiritual purpose. According to local Native American tribes, like the Anishinaabe, stones are more than just rocks. They're living beings. They hold spiritual energy and represent a connection to the earth and all living creatures. An elder from the Anishinaabe community even suggested that these stones are sacred, placed there by their ancestors to honor the land and its creatures. Scientists are trying to study the stone formation in depth, like about 40 feet. But that's the problem, actually. The fact that it's underwater makes it super difficult, since they don't have the best technology. Traditional archaeological tools don't work as well when everything is submerged, but promising new technologies like stereophotogrammetry, which literally means making 3D models of a site, are helping scientists study the stone circle more closely. Still, research is slow and expensive, so it's hard to know when this mystery will come to a close. As we said, Lake Michigan is a hot spot for unexplained phenomena. Its lakebed is filled with shipwrecks, such as the Thomas Hume, a sturdy American schooner. It also collects debris from airplanes that have suddenly gone missing while flying the area, such as Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 that disappeared in the 1950s. Some people even call the area the Lake Michigan Triangle, suggesting paranormal activities like what happens in the Bermuda Triangle might be going on. The lake spans over 22,000 square miles, which means it's almost two-thirds the size of the country of Ireland. In 2024, scientists were able to access another one of Lake Michigan's mysteries, the wreck of the Margaret A. Muir schooner. This 130-foot-long sailing ship sank over 130 years ago. The discovery was announced just recently by the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeological Association, the WUAA, whose team found the shipwreck sitting 50 feet below the surface just off the shores of Algoma, Wisconsin. Built in 1872, the Margaret A. Muir was a three-masted schooner built to carry heavy cargo across the Great Lakes. Her final voyage started out as a routine trip. Loaded with bulk salt, the ship left Bay City, Michigan, heading for South Chicago, Illinois. But on September 30th, 1893, things took a bad turn. Just as the Muir approached the town of Anapi, now known as Algoma, a sudden storm hit. The ship began taking on water fast. The captain of the boat ordered his crew to abandon ship, and thankfully, they all made it to shore safely. For more than a century, the wreck sat undisturbed on the lakebed, its location a mystery. But thanks to a combination of historical research and high-resolution sonar, WUAA searchers finally found her in May of last year. The wreck is remarkably well preserved, with parts of the deck and gear still visible. Well, just a few lakes over to the left, researchers uncovered another impressive thing. At the bottom of Lake Mendota, near Madison, Wisconsin, researchers found 11 ancient canoes. They believe the oldest of the canoes dates all the way back to 2500 BCE. Now, if you don't get why that's important, it's because you're thinking with today's head. If in a classic Midwest highway you see a bunch of pickups, then back in the ancient days you see only canoes. They were the main mode of transportation for indigenous cultures. They were used to fish in deep waters, trade goods, and travel long distances. The reason why scientists were so excited with this discovery is because they had never found any proof of what canoes were being used for in this region back then. And to understand the local cultures that inhabited the area during this time period, they needed to have some information on that. This exciting discovery was announced by the Wisconsin Historical Society in May 2024. The first canoe, which they believe is around 1,200 years old, was pulled from the lake in 2021. Then a second one was dug up in 2022. and now divers have found at least 11 more canoes along what would have been an ancient shoreline, long since submerged. One theory is that these canoes were intentionally sunk to keep them from freezing or warping in winter. It's possible people stored them in the same spot for generations. Or maybe this is just a small part of a much bigger settlement. Historians do believe there could be an ancient village hidden under the water of the lake. Divers have already found stone tools, like net sinkers used for fishing, but the village itself hasn't been located yet. Truth is, while the Great Lakes often steal all the thunder, scientists point out that smaller lakes like Mendota have stories too. The Wisconsin Historical Society is working closely with Native nations to piece together more about the lake's history. You'll need to believe me when I say there is a third Stonehenge, all the way under the waters of Lake Constance, Switzerland. I mean, think of it like Stonehenge's cousin. Archaeologists began to discover this back in 2015, when they found a line of 170 man-made stone cairns under the lake. Scientists say this was most likely the work of several villages, and that the cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose because, well, the formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide, and they can build up to 6 feet. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago. So around the time the original Stonehenge was being built. Some of the facts that link them together are their construction dates, as well as the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circular format. Scientists don't know much about this site yet, but hey, I see a pattern manifested all over the world, don't you? Let's do a thought experiment together, shall we? Now imagine you're climbing the Himalayas. However, you're lost. Where you are seems to be an isolated valley. You used all your food and water source and don't know which way to go. You're so out of energy that you don't even know if you'll be able to get back home. Suddenly, in the distance, you see a sage-looking man walking towards you. However, you can't help but to close your eyes as you are defeated by fatigue. You open your eyes to a totally new place. The sage is sitting right next to you. He says,
"Hello, traveler, and welcome to the land of immortals."
That sounds like the beginning of an Indiana Jones movie, right? But what if I told you that such a place actually is said to exist, according to some legends, beliefs, and ancient texts? Indian Tibetan texts mention a place called Yonaguni, also known as Shambhala or Shangri-La, depending on different cultures. This legendary city is the home of immortal beings and is a land of spiritual enlightenment. Take one of its names, Shambhala, for example. It literally means the source of happiness in the Sanskrit language. So, accordingly, you would expect this celestial kingdom to be surrounded by all things of great beauty and wonder, with gardens and other mighty and majestic structures. The ancient beliefs and myths state that when you enter Yonaguni, you will immediately be reminded of the structure of a lotus flower with 8 petals. The place is surrounded by mountains covered with snow. It has beautiful waterfalls, crowning into a pure and divine lake, and its water has extremely strong therapeutic powers. The whole place is illuminated by milky white light at all times, and this is neither due to the sun nor the moon. There are also phosphoric plants that can give desired light on voice commands. 100 types of other delightful flowers keep blooming all year round in its gardens, in addition to countless trees where delicious fruits grow. But one tree is known to be the most special one, and that is the tree of immortality, or the tree of life. Described as a shimmering crystal, it stands at the center of Yonaguni and unites the skies, the earth, and the underworld. The fruits of it resemble an abstract form of Sri Yantra, a mystical diagram used in Hinduism, which consists of 9 interlocking triangles. However, nobody is allowed to take these fruits out of Yonaguni itself. The only way to do it is if you get permission from the inhabitants of the city. This brings us to the question of who lives in this magical and mystical city. According to the legends, Yonaguni is inhabited by a great number of advanced masters, or in other words, sages, who subtly guide the destiny of the world through meditation. They are eternal beings who are not affected by any human desires or sorrows. Their duty is to protect the spiritual teachings of the world and work for the good of humanity, as well as all conscious beings. It's also believed that during a time of great chaos in the world, the 25th ruler of this Yonaguni will appear among them to lead the planet to a better future. These sages and eternal beings who live there are somehow also the protectors of Yonaguni. So, if you were thinking of just casually walking into this place with a map in your hands, sorry to inform you, but that's not happening. First of all, no one really knows where exactly Yonaguni is. Some people believe it's in a remote valley in the Himalayas. Some claim it's in a hidden cave. There are also people who think it's on a mountain range, and others suspect it's on a secluded plateau. So, the location of the city is a mystery, and seems like it will stay that way, since it is also said that the immortal sages who live in Yonaguni camouflage the valley from humans by creating some kind of an energy field. So, Google Maps can't help you with it either. That's why some even suggest, including the Dalai Lama, that it exists in a different plane of reality altogether. In some of the ancient texts, there are actually a few instructions on how to access Yonaguni. However, the directions are said to be incomprehensible, the way I get sometimes. But let's pretend for a second that you did crack the instructions, and the immortal beings living there were willing to grant you entrance. Unfortunately, you still might not be able to enter this cosmic city, and here's why. It is believed that only enlightened masters or sages who have a certain karmic connection with it will be able to reach there. So, what do the eternal beings of such a magical place do there? Remember, they have all the time in their hands. The ancient texts state that Yonaguni has a center and 16 areas that are all meant for 16 different sciences to be studied. These include solar sciences, universal planetary sciences, sciences related to time, the science of air, the science related to the sun and the moon, the science related to space, the science related to gravitational forces, and so on. What they all have in common is that to be able to learn them, you first need to have a very high understanding of energy. The level of courses that are studied is extremely advanced, and these teachings are still unknown even in these modern times. Each scientific system has different departments, and all these departments have their respective teachers. Since time doesn't work as we understand there, and immortality is possible, most of these teachers are hundreds or even thousands of years old. They can stay in their spiritual bodies, which appear like a mass of bright light, while their physical bodies remain separate. What a school, huh? It almost makes Hogwarts seem boring. And does anybody actually graduate from there? Of course, all these stories and mysteries about Yonaguni have attracted many people from all around the world. Countless attempts to find this land of immortality and spiritual awakening have been made by mountaineers and trekkers, including President Franklin Roosevelt himself. But as you might have guessed, they led to nothing. Still, there were a few people, like renowned spiritual leaders, sages, and adventure seekers, who claimed they had visited it. One of them was Sri Gopinath Kaviraj, a celebrated scholar, who was the first person in modern times to have allegedly found the place. After his supposed visit to Yonaguni, he wrote a book about it and made the place popular in modern culture. Upon reading his book, many other enthusiastic foreign scholars rushed into Tibet to learn more about it, as well as try to find it. Another person who claimed to have been there was a mountaineer who got lost in the Himalayas. According to his story, after getting lost, he was feeling hungry, so he accidentally consumed poisoned mushrooms. Feeling completely disoriented by them, he stumbled upon a mountain with a gap, which was covered by fog. Then he fell inside. After getting back up to his feet, he realized that he was surrounded by people dressed in strange clothes who tended to his wounds. After he was fully healed, they escorted him out of the city. Then there was the spiritual leader, Guru Sai Kaka, who revealed to the world about his not one, but many visits to Yonaguni. As per his narration, he claimed to go there, seeking spiritual and immortal teachings. He stated that a sage escorted him into the city every time he visited the place. In his stories, he also pointed out that the kingdom exists in a higher dimension. One other so-called visitor to Gyanganj was L.P. Farrell, an English officer, who claimed to have experienced the mystical place in 1942. Even if all these stories and descriptions about Gyanganj are able to give us a vivid picture, it can still be hard for many to keep an open mind about its existence. Yet again, it's not hard to admit that even the idea of such a place, where immortality is possible and truly moral beings are working to protect humanity, is comforting, mind-blowing, and fascinating.